So thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Anna Ostermeyer. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator with Milwaukee Riverkeeper, and through that role, I'm a lead organizer for Plastic Free MKE. And Allie and Leah, do you also want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yeah, my name is Allie Mendez. I'm the cleanup and events coordinator serving Milwaukee Riverkeeper, also with Marshfield Health Clinic through AmeriCorps.
Awesome. And I am Leah Holloway. I am the program manager for Milwaukee Riverkeeper. So I get to work with both Anna and Allie on all of their awesome projects.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll be moderating today, but Allie will be presenting for us. So Allie, do you want to just go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, I am the cleanup and events coordinator at Milwaukee Riverkeeper. So that means I'm in charge of all our events throughout the year. So that goes from paddles to hikes to our boat parade. But then I'm also in charge of our Adopt a River program, which is a volunteer program that gives volunteers the opportunity to hold cleanups all throughout the year. So today, we are going to talk about brand audits and how we can use them at cleanups around Milwaukee to hold polluters accountable. So you might not know exactly what brand audits are, but before we dig into that, we're going to talk a little bit more about why they matter and what impact they have on our watershed. But to do that, we need to learn a little bit about our river basin. So this is the Milwaukee River Basin. It's composed of the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnick River watersheds. So you can see Milwaukee is really only a tiny portion of the entire basin. So it's right down here. And then to give you a picture, it stretches all the way up to Sheboygan and Fond du Lac County. Um, and then all three rivers come to a meeting point in Milwaukee at the confluence, and then it feeds into Lake Michigan. So it's a lot of land. It covers 882.3 square miles. It holds 1.3 million people. And then 80% of the land is considered rural, and then 20% is urban. So each of these have different effects on the water, right? And so there are 1,300 miles of river in the basin, and 303 of those miles are considered impaired, which means that the waterway does not meet the EPA's standard for human or wildlife health in some way. So that's where Milwaukee Riverkeeper comes in, right? A lot of issues that make waterways impaired can be beyond a trash pickup, and they do require a lot more. And Milwaukee Riverkeeper does a lot of work on those issues. However, cleanups bring the community to the rivers, which fosters a connection that can help folks take a lot more actions for the health of the waters, and they still make a really big impact on the health of our waters. So you can imagine any piece of trash that falls in this basin is going to be pulled by wind, gravity, rain into waterways, and then eventually it'll make its way into our rivers, and then eventually it'll make its way into our lake, which is our drinking water. So it really does have a big effect on us and our health eventually. And so this is why we have cleanups, right? Not only does the community love participating on the river, but it makes a difference. Milwaukee Riverkeeper actually began holding annual spring cleanups in 1995. That spring cleanup has grown annually more and more, and it's a celebrated gathering that people have been taking a part in for 25 years. And over those years, we have removed hundreds of thousands of pounds of trash. After some time, however, it became apparent that one huge cleanup a year wouldn't actually cut it. Our waterways really needed more help. So in 2017, the Adopt a River program was created. This volunteer program, like I said, gives participants a chance to take ownership of the rivers by committing to hold 2 cleanups a year at their sites that they adopt. In 2019, 20,000 pounds of trash were removed from the river by adopters. Our adopters have made a huge difference, and most of them have seen clear improvements in trash levels at their sites over the years. So if you're interested in becoming an adopter, I would encourage you to check out our Adopt a River webpage. On that website, you can see what portions of the river are adoptable on our adopter map and which are not. After that, adopters would go through a quick training, and then they're ready to hold their 2 cleanups for the year. Now, once you are holding your events, you would be able to report all of your findings to Milwaukee Riverkeeper. And then another benefit of becoming an adopter that I haven't mentioned yet is that Milwaukee Riverkeeper is able to provide reusable gloves, buckets, and trash bags at no cost to adopters, thanks to the generous sponsorship of MMSD. So the program is easy to join, it's free, and it makes a huge difference, especially with all of that data that gets reported. And so that data actually is reported to Milwaukee Riverkeeper with the International Coastal Cleanup mobile app CleanSwell. So you can kind of see what that app looks like when you open it up here. The app is really easy to use, and it's used during cleanups as citizen scientists, or our volunteers, record the type of trash pieces collected. So it actually geo-tracks as volunteers clean, and that helps pinpoint where the data is collected. So then in that way, we can recognize trends in pollution in different locations around the basin. So we really love integrating citizen science into our volunteer projects because it gives volunteers a sense that they are making a difference, which is great because that is exactly what they are doing. And honestly, it makes it really easy to see the impact, and that's what's so important about this. Additionally, the International Coastal Cleanup is also working on on adding some brand auditing options into their app, but they currently only have the option to report trash types. But reporting trash types is really important. And ultimately, it helps us put together data to see what trash problems or what trash we have problems with in Milwaukee. So this is our 2020 trash report from Adopt a River. In total, there were 13,670 pieces of trash picked up and recorded last year. That is a huge amount of trash. And you can see in the pie chart that a lot of the trash that was removed last year was actually made from plastic. Plastic plates, plastic bags, plastic bottles, plastic utensils, plastic takeout, cigarette butts have plastic in them. Actually, almost 90% of the trash that we found in 2020 was plastic. This data is then reported to International Coastal Cleanup, and they actually have cleanup data from all over the world. So this is pretty cool because as we report our data to them, they can figure out which areas have issues with certain pieces of trash. So as you can see in Milwaukee, the most commonly found items were plastic bags right here, then food wrappers, and then that's followed by plastic bottles. So 20% of the trash that we found last year was plastic bags. That's crazy. And then 15% was food wrappers, and then 11% were plastic bottles. So now that we know the most common trash pieces that we find at a cleanup, we can estimate that a lot of trash that we pick up will be branded. So for example, most of the time, plastic bags that you pick up will say that they're from Target or that they're from Pick and Save. And same goes for food wrappers. You can see if they're Lay's or another type of brand that would be food wrappers. And the same goes for plastic bottles. So this shows that our brand audits here in Milwaukee will likely be really effective and give a lot of data. So our next step is to learn about how we can make systemic changes with litter cleanups by introducing brand audits into our Adapter River cleanups and cleanups that are taking place all around Milwaukee. So if you've never heard of a brand audit, you're in good company, and it is exactly what it sounds like. Simply, it records which brands are found and the numbers of the pieces of each piece of trash from each brand. So citizen scientists obtain and report this data, and they eventually contribute to worldwide data collection. So collecting this data really can take a lot of effort, but what's most important is that we are able to hold brands accountable for the litter that they are contributing to in our communities. So with that, let's learn how to hold a brand audit. So the first step in holding a brand audit is to choose your site. If you choose to join the Adapter River program, we have this lovely map on our website that shows the different parts that are still adoptable within the river basin. And they're all over, so all the way up here to Milwaukee County. So another option is that your brand audit can take place in your home. But we'll go over a little bit more on how to do that later. But for now, we'll focus a little more heavily on outdoor events. So if you choose to hold an outdoor brand audit, you can host your cleanup on water via canoe or kayak or whatever kind of boat you might have or might want to use, or you can hold your brand audit on land. And then you'll also want to consider the trash density at the site that you choose. You'd want to consider questions like, do I have enough volunteers to remove the trash present? Have I planned enough time to conduct both a cleanup and a brand audit? Is your site too big or is it too small for your volunteer team? Questions like that to think about the logistics on the day of. And trash levels can really vary all throughout the river basin. So it's important to check out your own site before you hold an event that you will be leading other volunteers at. So the next thing that you would want to plan for is waste disposal. What are you going to do with the trash that you collect at your cleanup? Now with the Adapter River program, trash is collected by our trash contractors through MMSD at no cost to adopters. So this really makes it convenient for our volunteers. However, we currently do not have an option for recyclers or composters to pick up additional bags, but adopters do have the option to take care of this on their own. We also like to note that waste that's covered in river sediment is not recyclable. So you would want to make sure that those pieces actually just get put into the trash. And then later on in the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about a fun option to dispose of branded plastic. So if you choose to do that, you would want to plan to separate out branded plastic from trash and recycling pieces. So next, you would prep your supplies. As I mentioned, Milwaukee Riverkeeper provides buckets, bags, reusable gloves, and we provide our adopters with as many as they need for their volunteer events. Although our bucket supply is currently limited, but you can always bring your own buckets, your own gloves, your own supplies. And then another thing that you would probably want to provide on your own is an old sheet or a tarp. And this is typically for larger cleanups, but you can do it for smaller events as well, depending on what you figure out that you like to do. And so the purpose for this is to lay out and display the branded trash after the cleanup, so you can easily count and record that trash. So then you want to get a good idea of what you'll need to put on your data card. And so this is the top half of the data card, but this is also provided by Milwaukee Riverkeeper via Break Free from Plastic. So starting off, you would of course put the brand name on this sheet here. And then you would also put the type of product that it is. So is it food packaging? Is it some sort of smoking materials, personal items? There's actually a list at the bottom of this data card that differentiates what each of these mean. And then based on that, you can circle one. And then you'll also want to write down what the type of material is. And if you're unsure, like me, I don't know all of my plastic types. This data card also has a list of the names of the plastics alongside the number of the plastics at the bottom of this page. So you would look at it at your piece of trash. If it has a number on it, then it would tell you which type of plastic it is, and you can circle that here. And then if your item doesn't have a number, there are also some descriptions and examples on what the material might be if you're just not sure. And then you would enter if your item has a single layer of plastic or multiple layers. And again, at the bottom of this page, there's some really great examples given so that you can determine what it is. And then there's also an unsure that you can circle. So if you really don't know, that's totally fine. You can just circle unsure. And then there's a column at the end here where you'll just tally up how many of each item you would get. And then finally, you would put your final total in this column right here. And next, you'll want to figure out how your team is going to count and record your data. So if you do have a larger cleanup, it'll most likely be easier to count all of the brands at the end. If a lot of trash is collected, it might even help to assign one person per item. And to do this, like I said before, you can have multiple sheets or tarps spread out and put all of the branded trash on there and sort it that way. And so that will just make it a lot easier to count and then keep track of what has already been counted too. And then you're going to record your data on the data sheet. Now, if your cleanup is smaller, with people who may have already experienced a brand audit, it might actually just be easier to count as you collect the item. So each volunteer could potentially have their own data card, which they could give back to the brand audit lead at the end of the cleanup. But I think what's important with this data strategy plan is that you would basically just do whatever works for you and your volunteer team. If you have never done a brand audit before, maybe you spend a little more time on it. You make sure that people know what's happening ahead of time so that they can think about what they want to do as well. So once you have made all of those plans, trash and supplies and data, you will be ready to hold your cleanup and pick up your trash. So again, you'll want to be sure that volunteers know that you're holding a brand audit ahead of time. And that's because data recording can be a really intense process. So really it'll help people to know what to expect before they attend what they might think is just a cleanup. And then we also ask that volunteers leave any dangerous trash that is found right where it is. So that would be broken glass or sharps or dead animals. Now, depending on your site, this may or may not be a problem. Some areas of the basin have more problem with broken glass, and some don't have any problem trash at their site. So again, going to your site ahead of time can be really helpful to know what to expect. And then another option that may help with the brand audit is to organize as you go. So not all trash that is found is going to be branded. So you could have volunteers sort branded versus unbranded trash as they collect. And it'll make it a lot easier at the end if you choose to count after the cleanup. So now during the event, it can really help to take pictures so that you can share the impact that you're making with your volunteers. And so some of these ideas would be to take a before and after of your site, especially if it has a high density of trash. Those pictures are really impactful. And then you could also take a picture of all of the trash from the most popular brand that is found at your site. And then another idea is to share a photo of the brand counting process and have a picture of all the brands that you find. Or you could take a picture of your volunteers that attend the brand audit. These can be shared on social media, and you can tag the brands that you find or that are pictured to make them and others aware of the trash that they're contributing to in our community. So to wrap up our cleanup, you're going to dispose of your trash. For this step, you'll want to refer to the waste disposal plan that we made beforehand. And as a reminder, Milwaukee Riverkeeper can take care of your trash if you become an adopter. And that's typically done through our trash contractors at MMSD. But if your site is outside of their service zone, we also work with local municipalities around the basin to make sure that your trash is taken care of. And then if you do want to recycle your trash, you'll separate out those recyclables. If any trash is compostable, you can separate compost and dispose of both of those, recyclable and compost, on your own. And then you can also save branded plastic for an additional step at the end that I mentioned. So then the next step is to report data. So this will be to turn in your data sheet. And you can send this into Milwaukee Riverkeeper via email or mail. It's as easy as snapping a picture of your data card and sending it our way. And then we're able to report this data into Break Free from Plastic. And this will help us, Milwaukee Riverkeeper, because we will receive the data and be able to track brands in Milwaukee on our end. But then we'll also be able to report the data to a worldwide network of volunteers and citizen scientists who are committed to ending plastic pollution. So your data will have an impact in Milwaukee and around the world to keep brands accountable for their plastic. Now, the final step in completing a brand audit is to return branded trash to that brand. This step is totally optional, but it can be a really fun way to force polluters to take responsibility for the trash that they're creating. So to do this, you can box up the trash you collected at the cleanup and then send it to the company's address. It's as simple as just doing a Google search to find that address and then using your preferred mail carrier to send it their way. Now, if you do this, it's suggested to include a letter to the brand about the impact that their trash is having on the environment in your community. Break Free from Plastic actually has some great suggestions on their website for sample language to start your letter. So this can be found in their brand audit social media toolkit on their website. And they suggest using 3 demands, and that's to reveal, reduce, and redesign. So reveal shows the problems with the trash that was found and that the company creates. Reduce calls for them to address their plastic footprint. And then redesign demands that they improve their packaging by either making it reusable or refillable. So I'm sure that you can tell that brand audits really can make it a big impact, and the holding a cleanup can make systemic change. A quick story of one success is that a school in India participated in a brand audit, collecting trash from all around their community. They ended up collecting 20,000 pieces of trash. More than half of those pieces came from a company owned by Nabisco. These pieces were all returned to the polluters by these students. The school actually ended up spurring some action in the government, with a city commissioner calling polluters to take action and make solid plans for trash removal in the city and giving them a deadline to do that. And the brand auditing program was so successful that it was encouraged to be used in surrounding communities to continue the movement to improve the environment and force brands to take responsibility for the damage that they're causing in communities. So there are a lot of success stories like this, but it's also important to address the few shortcomings of brand audits. So one of the problems is that sometimes tiny pieces of trash, like you see right here, they're so broken up that you cannot trace it back to a brand, right? Just by looking at it. Additionally, some trash is so faded that the brand might not even be recognizable. And then also there's going to be plastic trash that's not even branded. So it's important to note that there are limitations to brand audits. However, it still makes a difference to improve these, to remove these pieces of trash, to keep them from turning into smaller pieces of plastic, and to help protect our waters. So while some trash can't be identified, we can still highlight the brands that are present in our community. Because data matters. Collecting, reporting, and publishing data makes a really big difference. We now know that the top polluters in the world are Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, and Nestle, all because of brand audits all around the world. Because of the data, we are able to hold these brands accountable for what they are doing in our communities. We also have the chance to educate our communities on these brands and why this should matter to them. The data also helps to reveal trends over the years, right? You can see that right here. This way we can see which brands are taking responsibility and which are not. For example, the top 3 polluters, which, like I said, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, and Nestle, have held this position for 3 straight years. So having this data can help determine how we can take action and gives evidence of the damage that they're causing in communities. So as we begin this brand auditing process with our volunteers around Milwaukee, we'll be able to determine who the top polluters here are. The data we retrieve makes picking up litter have a systemic impact that will matter in the long run. If you've ever done a cleanup in Milwaukee, you more than likely have found a Swisher Sweets wrapper or product. And tobacco products are actually the second most found item at cleanups nationwide, but we really don't have a lot of data on which brands are the most found, especially in Milwaukee. So I'm sure you can see where this is going. Starting to hold brand audits in Milwaukee can help us see the impact that certain brands have in Milwaukee, particularly Swisher Sweets. And this solid data can help us to take harsher action against companies that are poisoning our community that would cause them to take responsibility for the damage caused. So if you are interested in making the systemic impact with cleanups, your next step could be to join our Adopt a River program. This program allows for a lot of flexibility at cleanups with your schedule, but also in your data collection, so you can hold your brand audit in whatever way works best for you. If you're interested in cleaning up our rivers, you can join the Milwaukee Riverkeeper 26th Annual Spring Cleanup on April 24th, and registration for that is open on our website. While this event won't necessarily have brand audits, you can still make a difference in our community by volunteering to remove the litter that has built up over the winter that I'm sure you've noticed outside. And then another option is to take part in a home trash audit. And this can be done with the trash that gets thrown out in your own home. You can kind of figure out which brand contributes the most waste in your own daily use if you want to. And actually, Hummingbird MKE has a great post on their website on how to conduct a waste audit at home. And it's really in-depth and it has a lot of detail, but it's really easy to follow. And it gives great helpful tips on reducing waste at home. So then we also have a video from Milwaukee Riverkeeper that discusses how to do this. So we'll take a little bit of time to watch that right now. Let's get into this and press play.
Now it's time for Jump In with Julius. How's it going, fellow river lovers? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Jumping with Julius. It's a little rainy out right now, but I don't really mind because just a reminder that we can find ways to keep pollution from getting into our water. That's because water, when it rains and streams down our roads, can collect trash and other items that go into our sewer systems and into our lakes and rivers. This can include things like plastic, trash, bottles, pesticides, even road salt in the winters. To protect our rivers, it is always helpful to clean up trash, not overuse salt, pesticides, and fertilizer, and to guard our storm drains. But there's always one surefire way to keep pollution out of our rivers. Can you guess what it is? It's to not make pollution in the first place. One way I like to do that, and that we're going to be doing today's lesson, is to do a trash audit of our household trash. Let's jump in. Now that we're back home, here's what you need to get your trash audit ready. To do the waste audit, you'll need paper, pen, and your trash. And that's it, actually. Waste audits are pretty easy to do. First, you'll want to fill out your paper like so, or you can find a trash audit paper online to print off. The first step of doing a trash audit is deciding how long you want to collect data for. I did 2 days. During this time, make sure to collect all of your trash in one location so you can examine it later. After that, you'll want to take all your trash, dump it out on a trash bag, and start to sort through it. Sort it out so you can see all of it at once. Then write down each item according to material and bin that was placed in. Once you're finished, you should have a good list of all of the trash that you used. The next part is the most important. Try to think of solutions or alternatives to the trash that you collected. I was personally pretty surprised and disappointed by the amount of trash I had made. For a lot of my items, a good solution would be for me to just not buy or use those things. Also, some of the solutions were that these things were compostable and recyclable. However, it still would be nice for me to use these things less because recycling is not a perfect system. Finally, here's a highlight reel of some of the other solutions that I came up with for the other items. For example, instead of using a plastic cup, I could get a reusable coffee cup. Instead of getting my oranges in a plastic bag, I could bring my own bag to put the oranges in. Instead of buying a plastic sports drink, I could just drink water. Instead of using aluminum foil to wrap my leftovers, I could buy a reusable wrap. And instead of using disposable floss, I could buy something that's compostable. Were you surprised by how much waste you created? What were some solutions that you thought of? Share it in the comments below, because in the end, we'll all have to make decisions on how to reduce our plastic and waste consumption. But if we do, we can all look forward to a brighter future. Thanks for watching. Remember to take care of yourselves and our rivers, and I'll catch you next week on Jumping with Julius.
All right. So, you can kind of see whether you do a home waste audit and record what's happening in your own house, and kind of figure out what brands maybe you're contributing to. You can figure out what ways you can cut back on that. But then there's also the other side. You can pick up litter and figure out how we can hold brands accountable for that trash. So that includes everything you really need to know about brand audits at home or at cleanups. So I think now we could take some time for questions if there are any.
Yeah, there was, thank you, Allie. That was awesome. I love the idea of using brand audit data in Milwaukee specifically. I think it could be really, really helpful for us in terms of which companies we're pressuring and talking to, local policies, all that good stuff. So like you were saying, I think this data is really important and crucial to informing what kind of systemic change we can make. With that being said, we do have a few good questions. So Jack was asking, is there any indication where the trash is primarily coming from, i.e. people littering, overflowing or unsecured trash cans during collection, during transportation? So really, where is the bulk of that trash coming from? What do we know about that?
That's a really good question. And so far, we don't really have the data to share on that. Yeah, but there's definitely parts in Milwaukee that are so much more heavy in trash density, as I'm sure most of us have noticed. So there's clearly some sort of trend happening there. It's just a matter of figuring out what that is.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick? I just wanted to add that, yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, and there are lots of different ways that trash enters our environment. You know, there are, you know, like the wrappers that blow out of our windows, or the people who don't understand, you know, and maybe throw a chip bag out on purpose, but most of it is more accidental than on purpose as far as individuals go. Trash, like on collection days, if people don't properly bag their trash, that is actually a pretty big source. Like Allie said, we don't have any data on how big of a problem, like how big of a source this is, but you know, anecdotally, I'm sure we've all seen, like when the dumpsters come or the trucks come to pick up your trash, right? If your neighbor's trash isn't properly bagged and it blows down your street, how frustrating that is. So that is a source. And there are also, unfortunately, larger scale polluters who, you know, dump their trash illegally or things like that, but we don't have any indication of like that breakdown, right? How much trash is coming from what source. It's really hard to track where it's coming from. That's where a lot of citizen science data comes in handy. For Riverkeeper, we talk to our volunteers all the time, and if they notice a source, like we can then go to that source and have a conversation with them or take more drastic action if that's necessary. And I'm thinking along the lines of like water quality pollution too. We've seen like massive water main breaks that are problems that our volunteers are the ones who spot it, and we can call people and be like, hey, you've got a water main break in your city. The same goes for trash. If you notice things when you're out there, let us know. There might be something that we can do, someone we can talk to. It's just really good to let people know about that stuff. And I kind of liken it to like point source pollution and non-point source pollution, right? Like when we're talking about toxic chemicals in our environment, there's the ones that like we know where they're coming from. That would be like a point source, and we can sue that organization or, you know, take some other action to get them to stop. but a lot of trash in our riverways is more non-point source, which is more of the like, it's just coming from a lot of different places and it's going to be a little bit harder to stop. And that's why cleanups are so important, because we're never going to be able to eliminate all trash entering our environment, but we can do what we can to prevent most of it. And then we've just got to get out there and clean up the rest. So I hope that kind of helps. Yeah, there's just no real good way to fully answer that question, but the more data we have, the better we'll get at answering that question.
Yeah, thanks, Leah, for jumping in there. So another question, Jack was wondering if plastic-free MKE would consider consolidating all of the area trash to send to the producers, which I think is a very intriguing idea, because I can see how having that higher volume would be really impactful, and coming from this amazing coalition, citywide collective. So Jack, you're sparking some good ideas. I think it's worth Allie and I maybe having a conversation about this. It would be really awesome to maybe coordinate some adopters who would be wanting to do a brand audit and ask them to save any of the branded waste that they find. And then maybe we could bring that to like a central location, take some pictures for, you know, those impactful images and send it back. So thank you, Jack. I think that's a really great idea, actually. I think that could be really powerful. So yes, we would consider it for sure. All right, and I think we had another one from David. So David says that they're a water quality monitor for Riverkeeper, and it looks like their section of the KK is adopted by a neighborhood organization. So how can they get connected with that organization to help with the cleanups? Allie, you got an answer for that?
Yeah, you can reach out to me. I can figure out who's got that section adopted and I can connect you with them. And a lot of we have a lot of like friends groups that are really easy to get involved with. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, I'm going to throw your email in the chat box so folks know how to reach you. Do that right now. And I can also include that in the follow-up email to everyone who attends. And we will be sharing the recording of this as well to everyone who registered. It will also be publicly posted on our Facebook page. So you'll definitely be able to access this again. And I'll also share some of those different resources and links that we've been talking about, so you can get to those pretty easily. All right, does anyone else have some final questions for Allie?
I actually got another question in my chat box, and I think it's an excellent question, and I wanted to maybe address it for everybody because I think it's so important. The question was related to how to properly bag your trash and how to talk to your neighbors about that. And it does seem, you know, kind of frustrating that we have to put our trash in plastic, right? It's more plastic, and that's something that I've struggled with. I know in some areas you can just put your trash directly in the bin on your curbside and then the trucks will pick it up. So that kind of skips that extra plastic bag. I believe, however, that Milwaukee does require the trash to be bagged. And one of those reasons is to prevent it from entering the environment. So on the one hand, like, yes, it's another plastic bag. On the other hand, it's actually doing a lot of good to prevent trash from entering our streets and our storm drains and providing a lot of litter. So it's kind of six of one, half a dozen of the other. It's not great, but it also prevents a different problem. There are other types of bags that you can use. They are usually more expensive, which is a challenge for a lot of folks. So, you know, completely understandable if you can't make that switch. But using like a paper bag that you can like seal with something that you'd have to get creative, tape, or if you didn't have a lot of trash rubber bands, maybe it doesn't have to be a plastic bag. It just has to be a bag to contain all of your trash. Another great way is to just reduce as much that goes into your trash as possible, right? Like, we've got a really good recycling facility here in Milwaukee. And so if we can properly recycle a lot of materials, if we can compost a lot of stuff so that we just kind of reduce our trash in the first place, then again, we're using less plastic bags. to get our trash to the waste management facilities. But yeah, that's actually, are there other ideas that folks have, other things that you've seen? Maybe we could brainstorm this problem a little bit, because it's definitely one that's come up before. It's something that I'm concerned about. You know, which is the lesser of two evils there, the plastic bag or the trash blowing down the street. Any other thoughts or ideas that we could talk about together? It's a tough one for sure. I think just doing the best you can to reduce the amount of trash you produce, and then also making sure that it is, you know, properly sealed. There are bags that are labeled as biodegradable plastic, which at least is less like virgin plastic. It's like either recycled plastic or different levels of like semi-compostable, semi-biodegradable plastic. It's not a perfect science yet, but there are those other types of plastic bags that you can purchase. Yeah, a few different options. None of them are perfect, unfortunately, but there's a couple different things we can try.
So we got another good question, actually. Thank you, Leah. Julie is asking if there are any local companies who collect plastic for upcycling instead of putting it in the trash. So, I mean, I guess I can jump in on this one, and if anyone else has something they'd like to add, you can jump in. But I would say that in terms of upcycling trash, it kind of depends on how you define trash, I guess. So TerraCycle is a very well-known large company that recycles the trash. So I wouldn't necessarily call it upcycling, because anytime you are taking used plastic and melting it down and basically turning it into something else, you are degrading the quality of that plastic. You'll also, with plastic, there's so many different types of resins and additives that it's really difficult with the huge variety of products that we have to recycle that into something that's maybe higher quality or will continue, like you can recycle over and over again indefinitely. So I guess I would add that to, in terms of upcycling, there aren't a ton. I would consider upcycling more like reuse, I guess, or repurposing. So I'm not sure about local companies who upcycle, although if anyone does have ideas, please throw them in the chat. In terms of recycling plastic bags, for example, most grocery stores will have boxes where you can put those plastic bags, and they will be recycled, but only in the way that plastic can. So usually you can only recycle it really once. So it's not ideal. So that would be the big one that I would think about in terms of plastic. But like I said, maybe there's others. There's so much going on in Milwaukee, so I'm not sure about that one. Oh, it looks like Jack says there's someone who's organizing plastic bag collection in the city. Oh yeah, okay, Jack, I think you're talking about a pilot program that has been happening. I didn't mention it because right now it is, yeah, very much in the pilot stage and pretty small scale. So yeah, we did promote that pilot program, and the leader of that program, her name is Harini, and right now it's a little bit on pause as she did this first pilot cycle. It went really well. I believe they collected like 35 pounds of plastic film. So that includes like plastic bags, but also like Amazon shipping sleeves, chip bags, like pouches, like juice pouches, those sorts of things. So things that you can't put in your recycling bin. And so the first phase was successful, but I think given the demand, Harini is now taking a little bit of time to build some capacity, get some communications channels flowing. So we will keep everyone posted. I'm really hoping that she's able to build it up so that more people can participate. But that is something to watch out for. So we'll be in touch about that one. Oh, and someone put, oh yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so there's also a local company that will recycle lighting products like Christmas lights, for example. So that's another one that I believe we shared before. So like I said, a lot of it is recycling. So, I mean, obviously, ideally, we want to reduce, because recycling does have its own issues. But you could definitely argue that it's, well, it's definitely better than those items ending up in our rivers and in our environment. So those are some options because those can't be recycled curbside. So there you go. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Any final questions from anyone? Okay, awesome. I think we'll wrap it up then. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Allie, and thank you, Leah, too, for providing your insight. I'm really excited for the spring cleanup. I think it's going to be awesome. And thank you, everyone who joined us today. And we'll wrap it up. All right. Bye, everyone.